Hey there, I'm James. Welcome to Game Stories, where we write games that tell stories. And in this episode, we are talking about a couple of RPG systems, tabletop role-playing game systems. In a previous episode, we kind of looked at what that means. We looked at we looked a little bit at the table of contents of Shadowrun, and we looked at what was the other one? Baron von Munchausen. And talked about sort of the spectrum of different kinds of role-playing game systems that are out there. In this episode, I'm going to take a couple of systems and go in a little bit more depth to teach you how to make a character and then the basics of how the dice mechanisms work in these two systems so that you can take them and apply them to the world that you're building and start playing it. If you've been following the series so far, you should have some kind of idea of a world that you have built and a sense of all kinds of different aspects of that world, from its social environment and its economics and its geography and all kinds of different things. You should have a sense of the kinds of details that the history of that world is left on the physical environment so that players can do some exploring and see the environmental storytelling you want to do. And then if you did the last assignment from the last video, you should have some kind of small adventure planned. A simple plot hook, a clear goal, some obstacles in a sort of contained location. And maybe you did that in 1 or 2 pages to try to keep it nice and brief. But now how do you test that? How do you see if your mini adventure is working so that you can then start to build up to bigger things? Well, for that you're going to need an RPG system and some players to test it out, right? So I'll show you 2 in this episode, and you can kind of pick and choose which one you want to use, and then you can hack it, meaning neither of these systems will be perfect for you, but there may be some aspect of one or the other that works really well for you, and then you may just start either renaming things or taking just certain parts of the system and building other parts for yourself, and then I'm applying them to your world. We'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, later in this video. We'll see. Okay, so the 2 that I picked are the D6 Open D6 system, and actually we'll be looking at a rule set called the Mini 6 system. D6 system is one of an older model of role-playing games. In fact, if you remember when I showed you this Star Wars source book for the West End Games Star Wars role-playing game system, this is one of the early D6 games, and the D6 system is sort of continued since then. So the rules I'll show you today, it would take a little bit of interpretation, but not too much to use the stuff from this source book in a Mini 6 campaign. So I'll show you that a little bit. And then the other one is called Freeform Universal. It's called FU, which is kind of funny. This is a sort of a more narrative-focused game. It's more on the Baron von Munchausen side of things, but it still has some dice and tests and stuff like that. So we'll look at both of those. Why did I pick these 2 out of the 889 different kinds of core rules systems that are on the RPG Geek database? Well, for a few reasons. My selection criteria were I wanted to pick systems that were free or close to free, so that you could sort of get your hands on these and play them pretty easily and start hacking them pretty easily. I wanted systems that were generic. They weren't specifically designed for a particular setting or a particular story, that were kind of made to be flexible so that you could apply them to different environments. That's not a perfect design goal for a game system. I think when you write your own game story or your own role-playing game system, you want to have rules that are specific. But for our purposes now, we need something that we can hack and repurpose really easily. So generic, ready to hack, ready to be repurposed for different environments. And then also something that was fairly rules-lite. I wanted systems that didn't have too many crunchy rules, because I have to teach you 2 systems in under an hour here, right? And I also wanted one that was a little more mathy, a little more systems-y and model-y in game systems, and one that was a little more narrative-y, story first, with lighter rule sets. So I'll show you how they both work, and I'll turn you loose to do your hacking, okay? So let's start with the D6 system. This is the Mini 6 rule set. and it is the bare bones edition. So this is the lightest possible version of this particular already light version of the Open D6 system that comes from Star Wars and West End Games and other stuff like that from Anti-Paladin Games. Let's just pick through this a little bit at a time. I'll show you some characters that I've made, and then I'll show you what it's like to test them against each other. And then that's pretty much all we'll do for this. So, okay. Should we start with dice basics? Yeah, okay. So both of these games that we're going to look at today use D6. So that means they use 6-sided dice. A lot of other role-playing games use all kinds of fancy-sided dice, which are cool, but it's simpler and easier to find 6-sided dice. So we used a couple of those systems. In the D6 system, you have stats that say some number, and then D, and then a plus something. That means, in this case, you roll 2 dice, 6-sided dice, and then add 2 to the result. That's what 2D plus 2 means. And you'll see lots of stats that look kind of like that. When you're rolling dice, one die will always be wild, so you use a different color. So you have a bunch of blue dice and one red die. That'll be your magic wild die. And if you hit a 6 on the wild die, then you get to roll it again. Some people call this like exploding dice, where you hit a 6, you get to roll it again and add that to your result. And if you get another 6, you roll it again. And another 6, you keep rolling it until you stop rolling 6s on that die, and you add all of that to your final result. It can make games kind of exciting. And it also means there's always kind of a chance you could succeed, even if your stats are super low, right? Okay. So that's the basics of the system. Then we have to start building a character. So I'm going to build a Star Wars character because that Star Wars source book is cool. And we just had a movie come out, so I'm in the mood. And I've already kind of built it here. I've started taking the Stormtrooper from the source book and have put its stats in like this, so we can fight a Stormtrooper in a minute. But I'm also building a character called Grexbo, Rebel Tracker. And this is a character sheet for D6. You'll put your character name up here. You can put a quote, like a kind of a catchphrase that your character might say. You can describe their appearance a little bit. I didn't bother. Describe their personality and then how old they are and stuff like that. These are sort of, well, these stats might come into play in the narrative in different ways. Like the DM might ask you, how heavy are you? But most of this stuff is sort of to get you in the mind of your character, to make you feel like you are Grexbo and you have an idea of how he or she might respond to whatever situations come up, right, with their personality. You can draw a picture over here, write your name. If there's a name for the campaign you're in, you can do that. But let's first look at the different things you need. First, you need attributes, which are the core stats for your character, and there's 4 of them, right? There's 4 core stats. There's might, which is how strong you are. There's agility, which is how quick and flexible and, I don't know, jumpy you are. If you want to dodge things, agility is a good thing. Wit is smarts, creativity, any kind of brain stuff is wit. And then charm represents your charisma, resolve, and leadership, it says. So any kind of interpersonal stuff that your character might have to do is represented here by charm. You have 12 dice to distribute among those 4 attributes. And the lowest you can give is 1 die to them, and the highest you can give is 4 die. So what this means is when there's a test of might, for example, you're trying to punch down a door or jump through a window. It's going to be a might test. And the DM will ask you for a roll, and you will see if you have a stat of 4D for might, then you'll roll 4 dice, and then you'll add up the total, and if it's high enough, then you'll succeed. So more D means more dice, means higher potential roll, right? So if you want a character that's really strong, you want to put a lot of dice into might, whereas if you want a character that's really charming and manipulative, maybe, then you put a lot of dice into charm. Okay, so I've modeled, what have I done with Grexbo here? Oh, also there's sort of this funny thing where you can trade in a die, splitting dice it says here, you can trade in a die for pips, meaning instead of giving 4D to something, you can give it 3D, and then you have 3 pips to add to some other stat. You can give, in other words, you can give a +3 somewhere else, or a +2 somewhere and a +1 somewhere else. It's a little bit funky, but check out the file. Read those rules right there. All right, so for Greg's bow, I wanted him to be a tracker. I didn't worry about him being super strong or charming because I wanted him to be smart and quick. That was kind of the idea I had for this guy. Agility also controls like how good you are with ranged weapons, like how good your aim is, right? And then wit can do things like tracking, like smart stuff like that, right? So I want him to be a good tracker. So I put most of my dice. I put 4D here, 4D here, 2D there, and 1D there. And you'll notice that adds up to 8, 9, 10, 11. And I can put 12 things. So I sacrificed 1 die to get a +3 to my agility. Okay? That's the basics of attributes. Then we go on to skills, and you have up to 7 dice to allocate to skills, but none of them can be more than 2 dice each. So that's 3 skills total, 2 at 2 and 1 at 1, or you can have 7 skills at 1 die each, up to you. They give you a handy sort of table here for different kinds of skills you can have. Might skills, agility skills, wit skills, and charm skills. You'll notice, well, I did take tracking, so I did take 1 wit skill, but I didn't take any charm skills because I'm not strong in charm. Brawling and dodge I've got highlighted here because you'll notice later in the system those skills matter a lot in how good you are at avoiding attacks. So you probably want to give yourself either some brawling or some dodge or both. And then if you're in a fight, having a weapon and a related weapon skill, either in sort of the melee weapons or the ranged weapons, can be a good thing. Okay. So what did I do for Grex? Where are you, Grex? Yeah. So I gave him brawling, I gave him blaster, and I gave him dodge, and I gave him tracking. That's a lot of skills. How did I pull that all off? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh yeah, because it's actually 4. I did the math wrong earlier. It's 4 skills at 2 and then 1 at 1. So when you're adding up your dice for a skill, you take the die you're giving to it and you add the base stat. So I put 1 die into brawling, and so I added that to the 2 die I have in might, and I end up with brawling stat of 3D. My base stat for agility is 4D plus 3. And I put 2 dice into blaster and 2 dice into dodge, so they both ended up at 6 dice plus 3. That's 4D plus 3, plus the additional 2 dice that I put into each of those skills. And then tracking, I put 2 dice into that and just added it to 4, and you ended up with 6 dice. Okay. If I'm going a little fast or this is confusing, take your time to read over these sections slowly, and then maybe come back and watch the video. It's pretty simple once you get the basic concept of, all right, I have a limited number of dice and I have to split them up into different groups. And then there's just some basic arithmetic going where you're adding stuff together. Okay. What's next? There's things called perks, and there's things called, I did do gear. There's perks and there's complications. I didn't bother with those right now. Those are sort of extra rules that are not really necessary for what I'm going to show you. So I'm kind of basically teaching you an even lighter version of these rules. So we skipped those. I did take some gear. The basic thing that gear does, these are weapons really in the system, or armor. Armor will give you a certain amount of pips on your defense stat. And then weapons basically show you how much you'll roll for damage. So I took a blaster rifle, and I said it does 5D of damage, and its range is 700 feet, right? I also took some light armor, and I said that gives me +1 to my defense value. So I took two pieces of gear for Greg's bow. What else now? Okay, so that's it. That's character creation for D6 if you leave out perks and complications, which I have. So what if Greg's bow needs to do something that doesn't involve combat? What if he has to do a non-combat event that's at least moderately challenging? Then he has to make a dice test. right? And how does that work? So let's imagine that Grexbo, he's a rebel, he's a tracker for the rebel forces. They've sent him to some mining planet, some remote outpost where there's just a little small town and a bar and a mine, and there's sort of like one stormtrooper that patrols. And they've sent him here to capture or kill this stormtrooper because he may possess some kind of information, right? So Grexbo's out here at the mining outpost, and first thing he has to do is find the stormtrooper. So he walks up to somebody on the street, and he's gonna say, "Hey, where's the stormtrooper?" That, because he's not a very charming guy, and because it's a social interaction, we're gonna model that by rolling the charm. And to do that, we need to go over to my phone. So I'm gonna disappear for a second. I'm gonna go over to my phone. Boop. See if this works. I've got a dice rolling app called Pip. Yeah, there we go. And I'll use this to do the different dice tests. We are rolling 1d6 because we are not very charming, right? And we are asking a normal citizen, "Hey, where's the stormtrooper?" And the game master is going to decide. This is a general non-combat challenge. It's going to decide how difficult is that. Is that an easy thing to get information from a random person on the street about this? Is it very easy? Is it regular easy? Is it moderate? Is it difficult? Is it heroic? Well, it's probably not heroic. In fact, it's probably the kind of information that people would think is even silly to ask because it's such a small town. So we're going to say it's very easy. But maybe we think this particular non-player character is kind of likes to keep to himself. So we're going to call it very easy, but at a level of 5. So poor Grexbo here, who is only a charm of 1, needs to roll a 5 or a 6 total on one 6-sided die in order to get this information. So let's see how he does. Oh, no, not like that. There we go. Oh! He rolled a 1. So fail, right? He asked the guy for information. He failed miserably, and the GM would say, well, you asked the guy where the stormtrooper is. He gives you a dirty look and kind of wanders off. You have a suspicion that if he runs into the stormtrooper, he might talk to him about you. So that didn't go very well. So what's the next move? Maybe Grexbo goes over to the bar, the one bar in town, and looks around and sees if he can find anybody. Actually, how about this? Since we've got this cool tracking skill, why don't we try tracking? We're going to see if we can detect any signs of an Imperial Stormtrooper and then track them down. Okay? So GM says, well, that, you're in a kind of a city setting, sort of a deserty planet, but it's still a small or kind of urban setting. You're in the main strip of the street, so it's not like you're in a forest or something where people will leave lots of tracks. We're going to say this is fairly difficult to find traces of somebody like that. And we're going to set the challenge at a 17. Okay. So target number is 17. Grexbo, though, has a tracking skill of 6. Ooh, and I forgot. I have to roll the exploding die, right? So, I can't click on there. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 purple dice, regular dice, and we'll take 1 wild die. So if we roll a 6 on that green die, remember the basic rule is that if I get a 6, I get to keep rolling it until I stop rolling a 6, and I get to add that all together. So I'm rolling 6 tracking die, trying to hit, what did I say? Difficulty of 17. So let's see if I can do that. Boop, boop. Roll a bunch of die. I did not get my 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 7, 11, 12, 15. Just short. So I was not able to track him down, but it wasn't a horrible failure. It was pretty close. Missed by 2. So maybe the GM says, well, you don't notice any signs of the stormtrooper, but it is a pretty small town, and you happen to hear like the squawking of a helmet communication system not too distant from you. So you're like, okay, I get a general idea of where he is, and then I'm going to go around the corner and take a peek. So I'm going to sneak up and see if I can see the stormtrooper without him seeing me. That would be a basic agility test, right? To be sneaky. But let's not do too many tests. We need to get to you get the basic idea here, I think, which is when there's a non-combat test, anytime someone's trying to do something that requires some amount of skill and is not a directly opposed action, no one's trying to stop you from doing it, then you just apply whatever the relevant stat is, if it's a strength thing or if it's a flexibility or speed thing or careful aim thing, or if it's a brain thing or a social thing. You pick the relevant stat, you apply that number of dice, and then the game master is going to set some kind of target number for you. You're going to try to achieve that number by rolling some dice. If you miss, which I've been missing pretty badly so far, then you fail and you have to try to find some other way to achieve your goal. If you hit it, though, then you succeed, and then the game master tells you what happens. But let's say I turn around the corner and I see the stormtrooper, and we're going to start shooting at each other. Then I'm going to use the rules I'm going to use this side of the rules mostly, fast static combat, which is a little bit simpler than the open D6 combat. So how does this work, though? First, I need to figure out some more stats to see how people block things. I'll show you on how I've done it on Grexpo over here. Everybody has a block skill, which is their brawling skill dice times 3 plus whatever bonus pips you have if you have bonus pips. Okay, so that looks like this. My brawling skill is 3 dice, so I multiply by 3, and then I get a blocking stat of 9. If I did not have any brawling skill at all, if I didn't have that, then my brawling skill would default to my might stat, which would be 2d, and my block would be 6. But because I gave myself one die in brawling skill, now it's boosted to 3, so I get a block of 9. To figure out my dodge, I do my dodge skill times 3 plus any bonus pips, and I've got some in this case. My dodge skill is d6 plus 3. So that's 6 times 3 is 18, plus 3 is 21. So I have a dodge of 21, which is pretty good. Pretty good. I'm not going to be able to, if we're in a melee fight, we're up close quarters and I have to block some kind of attack from a knife or a punch or something, I'm not going to be able to do that very well. But if we're at a distance and I can sort of anticipate what's coming, then yeah, I might be able to dodge an attack pretty well. There's also parry, which would be your melee weapon skill. I don't think like a rifle or a handgun or something would help here, but like a sword or a baseball bat or something. If you have a skill in that, then it would be that skill times 3 plus your pips. If you don't have a melee weapon skill, then I think it's just your base might stat times 3. So I've given myself a parry of 6. And then your soak is kind of like how much damage can you get hit with without actually getting hurt. And that is your might attribute times 3 plus any armor pips, and then if you have other kinds of bonuses you can get, but we're not going into that right now. I do have some armor, which gives me a +1, and then it's my might times 3. So his soak is might of 2d times 3 is 6, +1 for my light armor equals a soak of 7. So if the stormtrooper hits me, which I hope will not happen because I'm going to try to stay distant, then he has to roll more than 7 damage to give me any kind of hit at all, which isn't too hard. Soak of 7 is pretty low. Okay, let's say I've got the drop on the stormtrooper. Let's take a look at his stats. I'm going to be able to shoot first here, right? I've got the drop on him, and I can take aim. So I can use my blaster skill of d6 plus 3. So I'm going to roll these again and roll all these dice and add 3 to the result. But what do I have to do to hit him? Well, he's going to take kind of his highest ability to stop anything. He's going to take his block. He's going to try to block my shot with his armor, I guess. He's wearing stormtrooper armor, which gives him a +2. That's already accounted for here. So I have to hit a 15 or better to make sure I land a hit on this guy. Okay? So let's take a look. Let's see what happens. I roll my dice. I've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 19. And I did not get the bonus. I don't get to keep rolling, but 19 is plenty. I definitely hit him. And now I need to roll damage. So we go back to our damage. And I get to roll 5 dice for damage. So let's take away one of these. I don't need that. Let's take away one of these purple die. And we'll roll for damage. Boop, boop. And I've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 17. So that's pretty good. But what is his soak? His soak is 8, and I got 17. So I've surpassed his soak by 9 points. And then I look down here to see what his wound level would be. If it was 0, I hit him but got not past his soak, then he would be stunned. If I got between 4 and 8, he would be wounded. If I got that again after he was already wounded, then he would be up here to severely wounded. But I got 9 over, which means he is incapacitated, and he will roll minus 3d on anything he tries to do. The penalty applies if the character is conscious. Let's assume he's still conscious. Let's assume I shot him in the shoulder or something. It didn't destroy him, but it knocked him back really hard. He's conscious, and he's dizzy because I hit him so bad with my blaster rifle. He may even have got pretty severe burns under there. So can he do anything? Can he respond? He would want to try to shoot back. So he has a blaster skill of 4d. But he's going to only be rolling 1 because he's right now at minus 3d, right? So he can only roll 1 die to attack. And what is my... So it's impossible for him to hit me, right? Because he needs to roll higher than a 21. He cannot do that with only 1 die. So he's effectively out of this combat. And I didn't kill him, which means that I can approach him and maybe capture him or search him for whatever information I was trying to get for the rebels. And yay, success, right? Okay. Is that all I need to show you about the D6 system? I think so. These wound levels, if you get hit even at a low level and then you get hit at that same low level again, this ticks up 1 notch. So anytime you get hit, it'll at least go up to the next thing, unless you hit someone really hard and it jumps up to a higher level, meaning you got the 13 and 15. But let's say I'm here at incapacitated and I shoot him again. Even if I only do a few points over their soak, it still jumps up to the next level and gets them mortally wounded. Is there a dead? No, but if you go beyond mortally wounded, you can understand what happens there. Okay, so that's D6 system. It is basically designed for, more or less for combat. It manages some non-combat things, but not you don't get as numbers crunchy until you start shooting people, right? That's when most of the stats come into play. Otherwise, for a non-combat or a non-opposed action, you're basically just rolling some dice against whatever the game master says is the target number, right? They decide how difficult it is and then give you a number, you roll some dice and try to hit it, right? And then if you get it, they narrate the result. If you don't get it, they tell you what happens instead and you try something else. Okay, combat was the last thing. Yeah, and the rest of this book has, special rules for all kinds of stuff. And I think it even ends with some different kinds of scenarios so that you could apply these rules to different things. Is that true, or am I making that up? There's a nice section called Making the Game Your Own, which means the purpose of this, the open D6 system or the mini 6 system, is for you to take these basic rules and then change them so that they fit the story you want to tell, the game story you want to make. And the way you might do that, you can make small changes. You can think about those 4 core stats and you can maybe rename them or make them something else completely. Maybe you don't need strength in the kind of game you're telling. Maybe you need something. Maybe you want to take social skills and break those up into friendship and trust, the kind of trust that people have in you, and sense of humor or something like that, because you're going to tell a more relationship-oriented game where people are telling stories about how they get along with their friends, and you need to be rolling stat checks for stuff like that rather than for combat. And maybe combat is not even going to happen, just sort of like arguments. Maybe you model arguments that way. Anyway, so you can take the basic system and rename things and repurpose things for the kinds of stories you want to tell. You can also, when it comes to skills, you don't have to have, blaster rifle skill. You can think about that skill list. Where did it go? And input skills that would be appropriate to the kinds of things that are going to be happening in your game, right? The kind of world that your game has, what kinds of people would be in that world, what kinds of skills would they have, what would they be good at, or what could they be good at, right? So think about that and think about what basic attribute those skills would be associated with. And if you want to do hacks beyond that, and if you want to get into perks and complications and stuff, we're welcome to. If you want to think about different kinds of gear or alternates to damage, different ways that different kinds of gear might be able to work if you're not going to have combat, or if you are going to have combat, if you want to make them work a little differently, that's all good. All right, enough with that. That's the D6 system. You can read more about it. You can make your own characters and test it out. You're welcome to hack it, repurpose it to your own stories. Now we get on to FU, Freeform Universal. And I'm just going to make the same characters. I'm going to make the same Stormtrooper, and I'm going to make Grek's bow again, which I've already made up those character sheets, and we'll run through the same scenario with these rules to show you how this system emphasizes different stuff. Okay. How does it begin? What do you need? You need paper and pencil. Okay, so making a character. First, you need a concept. Should be the kernel of who your character is, and where's my FU Grek bow? Here we go. So his concept is Rebel Tracker, right? He's going to be a kind of hunter and tracker who is now maybe a former bounty hunter, right? Who now is working for the rebels because he believes in the cause. So we got the concept. And then we need descriptors, which is an adjective or a phrase to describe the most distinctive features of your character. And we need those in 4 areas. We need the descriptor of the body, the mind. We need an edge and a flaw. So body is just like, what's your body like? Is it nimble? Or is it fragile? Or is it any one of these other many things or something else, right? Some kind of thing that describes your body in a term that might come up often enough in this kind of game, right? You want a term that will matter to the game either positively or negatively at some point. And then same with mind. They've got level-headed here, or here they've got observant, which can matter. And then they've got some more examples down here. An edge is like, well, here they've got read minds, right? Or uses a bullwhip. Some kind of extra thing that character can do that gives them an edge in certain situations. They're a little bit better at something in certain situations because they've got this bullwhip, like Indiana Jones, right? They can keep people at bay, or they can swing across gaps or something. And then you can imagine reading minds would come in handy in all kinds of circumstances. And then a flaw is like something that could potentially or will show up in the game story in ways that are a problem for your character. Afraid of heights. So anytime they're in a high place, that's going to be a problem for them. Alien perspective, I think, in this case just means like they don't really get the world that they're in. They're from another planet, and so they're looking around at Earthlings like, wait, what? I don't know how to do Earth, right? So that could cause them problems, like in social interactions or having to go to the store and buy something. There's some more examples here, and in the back of the book, there's even more. So what have I done for our man Grek's bow? I've said he's quick in body. This sort of is like, in the D6 system, I gave him a lot of, agility? I forgot the stat already, but I gave him the speed and the dodge and the aim kind of thing, so he's quick. I made his mind focused because he's a tracker and he's like good at aiming his gun. His edge is that he's a marksman, because the way I want to play this guy is that he stays distant, because if he gets too close in a fight, that can be a problem, and he takes aim. And his flaw is that he's got no charm, right? There's not like a model here for how much charisma do you have. So I just threw this in there as like, he's not going to get along well with people because he's got no charm, right? Okay, those are the basic descriptors. Then you get some gear. Gear is always an adjective and a noun, and it says you can take 2 items, so I've just taken the ones that I had from the other one. I've got powerful blaster rifle and light armor. Don't need any numbers there, don't need no ranges, just what do you got? Give me an adjective and a noun. And then, I didn't actually do this for Greg's bow, but you can add a description or drives and relationships, which should actually be really helpful in this game. I could say, Greg's bow is a former bounty hunter that turned rebel after, something. He looks like this. He looks like he has a fish face, but he's super skinny and has like spider arms or something. And then his drives, what does he want? Maybe he wants vengeance for something. What's stopping you? Darth Vader's hard to kill. What will you do? Join the Rebel Alliance and try to take down the Empire. And then relationships would be if there's other players in the game, then what is Greg's bow's relationship to them? Why are they hanging out? What do they do together, right? And I didn't put those in for him, but could have. That's it for character building, right? You got your concept, descriptors, gear, descriptions, drives, and relationships. When it comes to action, one really important concept here is that only players are going to roll dice. And D6, players roll dice, and the GM can roll dice, right? When I, as player, attack Stormtrooper, the non-player character, I'm rolling dice to see if I hit the number, and I'm rolling dice to see if I damage them. When GM is Stormtrooper attacking player, GM does exactly the same thing. Rolls dice to see if he can hit their target number, and then rolls damage to see if he or she damages them, right? In this game, only the players roll dice. We say it's player-facing. All rolls are player-facing. Means there's a narrative, and then the player does some kind of a test with their character. The way this works is you're going to basically, the default situation is that you'll roll a single d6 die. And if you get an even number, then the answer to the question is yes. Meaning, do I shoot the Stormtrooper? If you roll even, the answer is yes. And if you roll odd, then the answer is no. So was I able to jump over the building? Odd, even number? Yes. Odd number? No. Was I able to dodge out of the path of the oncoming vehicle? Even number? Yes. Odd number? No. Any kind of situation, was I able to shoot them? Was I able to succeed in my combat? Even number? Yes. Odd number? No. And the higher the number in either category, the better the result. So, for example, a 6 is yes and, meaning you got what you want and some kind of extra bonus to be determined. If it's a 4, it's just yes, you got it. And if it's a 2, then it's yes, but you got what you wanted, but some kind of cost happened, right? Yes, you did, shoot the Stormtrooper, but the sound of the blast alerted some of the locals, and now they're charging at you. All right, they're in the fray too. Or yes, but as he's sort of knocked him behind a dumpster, he's out of your aim now, and you can hear him on his comm link calling in support, right? So yes, and is like you shot him, and his helmet flew off, and his comm link has been lost or whatever. You got the advantage you wanted and more. Yes is just a simple success, and then yes, but is some kind of complicating factor. These are all failures. These are all no's, meaning you didn't shoot him, but it's not a total loss. You took aim, you shot at the Stormtrooper, you missed them, but they are now cowering behind a dumpster and are pinned down, right? If you get a 3, it's just no, missed, and then here comes some consequences. No and means not only did you miss, but now you're in even deeper trouble. Not only did you fail to jump over the building, but you broke your leg. Not only did you fail to get out of the way of the moving vehicle, but the car hit you, and now you're in the passenger seat because you smashed through the windshield, and the police handcuffs you to the dashboard or whatever. You didn't get what you wanted, and things got worse in some way. Okay. So that's the basics of that. So this is a little more explanation of what and but mean. When that happens, you'll either add a condition to your character or to some other character, or you'll add a detail to the scene. Do you really need to know these terms? I'm not sure. But if you're kind of confused about what to do with an and or a but, you can think, well, some new information I can add to the scene, a detail, or I can add some kind of result to my character or the other character, right? And it may be you or the GM that gets to add that detail. I'm not sure. When you get to add a qualifier. No, I guess it's you. Okay. So it's not always as simple as just rolling a d6 and taking a 50-50 chance of success or failure. Sometimes you can make things easier or harder depending on whether or not you have something on your character sheet that could matter. So if I am shooting, Grexbo is shooting at the stormtrooper, and he's focused and he's a marksman, then Grexbo will get to roll some extra dice, because you always get to roll one, and we'll say marksman gets to you an extra die because that's good for shooting, and focused gets you even another extra die because that's also good for shooting, right? In this case, the blaster rifle would just enable the action, wouldn't really give you an extra die unless you had like scope for blaster rifle, then that might help, right? So you'll be rolling 3 die in that case, and then you'll take the best result. It might not be the highest, keep in mind, right? If you roll 2 odds and an even, you're going to take the even, right? But you'll take the best die roll. So you can look back at this chart, where to go. Oh, it's also on the character sheet. Roll 3 dice, check here, and take whatever's highest on this chart, whatever the best result is, and apply it. Likewise, if you don't have any things that help you, but you do have some things, where did we go? Making things harder. So if you've got, so let's say we're back in the situation and Grexbo is trying to talk to someone on the street and say, hey, where is the stormtrooper? You'd roll 1 die normally, but you'd roll an extra die because you have no charm. And in this case, the die is negative, and you're going to take the worst result of the two, right? I'll show you that in a second. So whatever's lower on this would have to be your result. And then in combat or an opposed action, how does it work if players aren't rolling dice against each other? Well, it's not the GM rolling dice against you. So when the stormtrooper attacks me, in other words, does the GM roll dice? No. So then what do we do? The GM will say, stormtrooper shoots at you, what do you do? And I will say, well, I'm going to jump out of the way before he can hit me, and I get a bonus because I'm quick. And I'll roll 2 dice, and I'll take the best result. Unless the stormtrooper also has some qualities that would make it harder for me, like maybe the stormtrooper is also a marksman and is also focused. So maybe the stormtrooper gets +2, which is bad for me, and I only get a +1. Then some of those dies will cancel out, and I'll be left with 1 bad die. Maybe I didn't explain that very well. You can kind of read about it here. Canceling out. This section says, what if there's sort of positive things and negative things that would factor into the situation? Well, you're never going to be rolling like positive and negative dice at the same time. If you have a positive and like a good thing and a bad thing that are both applied, they just cancel each other out. All right. So, what would be an example of that? If I don't know, I'm trying to like follow somebody, and I've stayed focused on them, but I also have no charm. I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of situation where both of those matter. This in a negative way, that in a positive way. They cancel each other out, and I just roll 1 die instead. Okay. And that's true too, where there's like someone shooting at you, that's going to be negative against you dodging, like, you know, bullets are fast, and the marksman is good, then those are negative things against you, and you add your positive things, cancel some stuff out, see how many dice are left and which side. Too many rules. Okay, so that's it, I think. That is all of the rules. We're not doing FU points, which are funny. You can look those up. They're not really funny, but the name is funny. Some basic information for how to be a good narrator. And then I think there's like sort of a fake, like a sample adventure of how you could apply this, how you could hack these rules to make an adventure for people. But let's go through that scenario again and see how it works. Okay, we've got Greg's bow, and he's landed on a planet. He needs to find the stormtrooper, so he's going to talk to somebody on the street and see if they will help him. Let's go over to the phone. All right, so Grexpo does not get all these dice, and there's no special green die. There's no like exploding or winning. He rolls 1 die for basic, and he's talking to a guy on the street. So he's asking them, hey, where's the stormtrooper? Does he have anything that would help him? Any kind of environmental details or character details that would help him? No. In fact, he has one that hurts. He's got no charm. So he's going to roll 2 dice. I can't click on the screen. I got to go here. He's going to roll 2 dice. Let's make them the same color so we're not confused. And I will have to take the worst result of the 2. So I got a 5 and I got a 1. So the worst, they're both odd, which means they're both failures, and 1 is the lowest. Which means no and. Okay, so not only did I not get the information I wanted, but I also created a further complication. So this guy's like, no way am I talking to you. And furthermore, when I see that stormtrooper, I'm going to tell him about you. So the Empire is on your case, buddy. And he wanders off. So now I'm like, oh man, I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll try to track, right? And that's what I tried last time. In the other scenario, I will try to see if there's any information in the area, if I can read the physical landscape to see if there's any kind of signs of where the stormtrooper might be. Oops. Now I haven't modeled that very well for a tracker. I just sort of put focused. So I didn't add anything that would make him, there's no skill sets here. You can't add any skills. So we can't do that, but we'll just sort of assume that focus, we'll just say, like, I'm going to argue to the GM that focus is going to help me here. And GM says, all right, yeah, okay, go for it. So I'll roll 1 die for standard, and I'll roll another one because I'm focused, and I'll take the best result of the 2. Do I find any information just by looking around? And, ooh, wow, no you don't. Not only, right, they're both 1s, which means they're both no and. Not only do you not find any evidence in the area, but there's a couple locals looking at you down the alleyway. It seems like the guy you just talked to has told everybody else about you, and now it's kind of bad feelings in the town about you, and you're just sort of wasting your time dilly-dallying around on the street. Looks like a mob might be coming toward you. Okay, so that's bad. I need to find the stormtrooper and get out of here. So I'm just going to kind of duck down a side street. I want to kind of, walk the perimeter of this town to see if I can find him and see if I run into the stormtrooper or not. Now this, when I say I'm going to walk around to see if I can find the stormtrooper or not, the GM always has some discretion here. GM can say that requires a test to see if you find him or not. Or the GM can just narrate the answer. If it does, if where the stormtrooper is that they're walking the perimeter and you're walking the perimeter to find them, do we really need to roll dice for that, or can we just put them together to move the story forward? If it's me, I'm going to say, all right, so as you're walking the perimeter, you notice several hundred yards ahead, you see the white armor of a stormtrooper, right? Okay, great. Then I'm going to take aim at the stormtrooper and try to shoot them. So I have marksman and focused. So I think that gets me 3 dice to shoot this stormtrooper. GM says, yep, I'll buy that. And so, keep popping out of the app. I'll add a third die, and hopefully I can roll a little better this time. Rolling my shot. Ooh, okay, I got 2 5s, which are both no's because they're odd, and I got a 2, which is a yes, but, right? Yeah. So you do hit the Stormtrooper, but didn't really do any damage, and more or less just caught the Stormtrooper's attention. So they are turning and immediately draw their rifle and fire right back at you. What do? GM doesn't roll any dice for that. There's just sort of a laser blaster coming my way. So what do? I'm going to try to get it out of that way real quick. And I'm going to say, because I'm so focused, that help me dodge, please. And the GM says, okay, yep, we'll buy that. Roll 3 dice. Take the best result. Come on. There we go. Ooh, and the best result is a 6. That means, yes, not only did you dodge the shot, but you also were able to land in a place where you are under cover. All right. So the GM adds some detail to the scene. That's going to help me, right? So in the future rolls, I'm getting shot at, I can say, well, I'm behind cover, so I get to roll some extra dice for that. So great, I'm behind cover. I'll take another shot, and with the same dice set, right? Because I'm still focused and still a marksman. And I say, okay, take your shot. Come on. And I got a 6 again. All right, sweet. So that's a success of the best kind, a yes and. So we can say, yes, you hit them and you knock them down unconscious. All right, sweet, perfect. They're not dead, which is what I want, but I got them, which is even better. Now I can sort of run up there and search for whatever information or whatever. Okay. All right, that's the end of the scenario, I think. That's what we basically did last time, right? Same basic situation, but 2 different systems to model the conflict. You can see that one is more about comparing numbers and doing checks, and GM and player both rolling dice. This one is more about descriptors and building a pool of dice to see like what happens. And the results are not just like, how much something is, how many numbers, but it's a more narrative kind of result. Oh, and so where's my Stormtrooper? My FU Stormtrooper. When someone takes some damage, oh yeah, shoot, I forgot to add like clumsy and stuff to, well, whatever. When I got the yes and, I could have added some kind of thing here. Can I copy that? No, it's not working. Okay, whatever. I could have marked off some kind of condition or added a condition to the Stormtrooper. And in fact, I said he was unconscious, right? So I would say unconscious and check that box. He could later regain consciousness, and then I could erase that, right? He could rest and get his senses back. But that's how you sort of keep track of damage like that. If I'd been shot by the Stormtrooper and injured, we could mark that off as injured, or if it terrified me or something, we could mark that off as scared. And then these descriptors, these conditions, would factor into the narrative in the future. Meaning, if I tried to shoot again, but I was blinded, that's gonna, maybe the GM will even say like, oh, you can try shooting, but I'm gonna give you 2 negative dice for that. Or if I try to escape, but I'm trapped, or my injury is that my leg is broken and I try to run away. That's going to add negative dice to the pool and give me lower odds of success, right? Whereas if I gain like better conditions because I've done some sort of thing, then those will add positive dice to the pool and give me better odds of better success. Okay. All right, so this is sort of a less faithful like mathematical model to make everything fair, and it's more like what kinds of letting the narrative drive the dice, right? Letting the narrative drive things. Like what are the descriptors in the world that would matter here? Let's let all those contribute a die, and then roll the result. Okay, all right, that's it for this video, I think. You got a sense of what the mini D6 system is like. And I know I've rushed over these pretty quickly, but you should have a sense of what the D6 system is like. You should have a sense of what the FU system is like. And you may by now have kind of a sense of how you would like to use them, or which one you might want to use, if you want to go more with the numbers modeling or more with the let's just do descriptors and roll some dice. Hacking means you take them and repurpose them in some way. You change the kinds of skills that are available, or the kinds of, what would it be for FU? You may have different kinds of suggested adjectives, or you may have some pre-made characters for people, for them to use, that are well fitted to your world. Kinds of equipment they can pick from that would be appropriate to your world, or kinds of concepts. You might give them some concepts that would fit into the kind of story world that you're telling. That get them into the narrative in some way, right? So a hack just sort of means like, what little extra tweaks can you put in this to make sure that it fits into the world that you're making, right? So that's the assignment here, is read these over or browse them, or if you've already got a sense from what I've talked about which one is more appealing to you, take one of them and read through the booklet, pick out the rule sets that you want to use that feel most relevant, and then make whatever little tweaks and changes you think you need to make in order for that rule set to be applicable to your world, right? And give your players the kind of play experience that you want them to have in your world. And that is all. Okay, give it a shot. Be interesting to see what your games look like. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.